Unit 731, led by the infamous Japanese scientist Shiro Ishii, was a covert laboratory tasked with preparing Japan for chemical and biological war against belligerents. Masquerading as the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department in Harbin, China, Unit 731 was in fact a covert biological and chemical warfare research and development unit of the Imperial Japanese Army that conducted barbaric human experimentation. Chinese, Mongolian, and Russian prisoners of war and alleged criminals were routinely subjected to inhumane testing for biological weapons. Within the prison walls, no less than 3,000 people were murdered annually between the period from 1937 to 1945 for the sake of developing weapons not only meant for war, but also for the destruction of civilian populations. The total number of people killed by Unit 731 is unknown. Victims, called logs or marutas, were incinerated after being experimented on. Additionally, Unit 731 tested biological weapons in the surrounding areas of Manchuria, killing an estimated 500,000 people. Just before the end of World War II in the Pacific, following the Soviet Union's declaration of war against Japan, Unit 731 was liquidated between August 9th and 13th, 1945. Ordered to leave no traces, everything was destroyed and all prisoners were killed either by poisoning or shooting, and their bodies burned. The 17 stanzas of this poem, written in the style of a haiku, was composed in 1969 by a former Unit 731 member, more than 20 years after the end of the war, and evacuation of the unit from its base near Pingfong, China. The author wrote 17 different haikus and combined them into an epic, capturing the inhumane experiments and torture prisoners suffered at Unit 731, the unit's liquidation, and post-war aftermath. The first and second stanzas speak of inhuman frostbite experiments carried out by the Yoshimura group. After these experiments, the prisoners' arms would often fall off. The fourth stanza tells of handcuffed and shackled prisoners who were often delivered during scorching heat and sun, and also mentions inscriptions written in blood on the prison cell walls like, "Down with imperialism." Of the 17 stanzas, the fifth deserves special attention, which refers to an escape from prison. The words, "Let's run" or jailbreak give reason to believe the poem's author is talking about an event that occurred in a special prison unit. Unit 731 operated from a special, strictly guarded prison where no one came out alive. The logs inside were brutally exterminated on an average of 3 people every 2 days, but this does not mean they did not fight for their freedom. The biggest example of this struggle was a riot that broke out in early June 1945. None of the prisoners managed to escape, but they fought valiantly for their lives. The seventh stanza tells about the burning of corpses, of logs, brutally murdered during the liquidation of the unit. News of the Soviet Union's declaration of war against Japan on August 9, 1945, and subsequent entrance into Manchuria, forced the Japanese army to destroy all evidence and remains of testing facilities. The eighth stanza speaks of countless experiments carried out at a special training ground near Anda Station to infect logs with plague by using fleas. The ninth stanza speaks of how the devil is in the appearance of the doctor, referencing the head of the detachment, Lieutenant General of the Medical Service, Shiro Ishii. Ishii was the creator, director, and most important figure of Unit 731. The 10th stanza tells of the unit's evacuation on August 9, 1945, and the destruction of detachment structures. Stanzas 11 through 16 depict the evacuation from Pingfong and the crossing of Chinese and Korean borders in the escape to Japan. This is a story about Unit 731 members who learned about the end of the war and feared for their lives due to the war crimes they had committed. The last stanza, about the pagoda monument at the Tama Tokyo Cemetery, is very significant. With the end of the war, the unit was disbanded, but its members did not lose contact with each other. They created societies of fighting friends, and once a year they organized all Japanese gatherings to maintain old ties. In 1958, a pagoda monument was secretly erected at the Tama Cemetery in honor of the dead members of Unit 731. Only a few cryptic Sanskrit characters were carved on black granite with no further inscriptions. At that time, the reason for its existence was hidden from the Japanese people and the world. A poem about the crucified. Fragment. Frozen bodies. Somebody should draw them. From fear shakes the hand of the artist. Here is the hand of a criminal. Turning black, it freezes, falling off in a puddle of blood. A dissected living body. The scalpel is sharp, and the blood on it is becoming cold and caked. Scorching summer heat. A column of prisoners. The clink of shackles is ominous, moans, weeps. Let's run! A call to action, but a bullet is released, and the only freedom from suffering is death. Down with imperialism, about such prisoners wrote. Their blood is on the prison's walls. In the flaming bonfire, burn the corpses of prisoners. Everything is passed to the fire to leave no trace. Crucified on the cross, test subjects of the unit, plague fleas of suffering bring death. The bloodthirsty devil is seen in the appearance of the doctor who committed such cruel deeds. Fire and explosions, the fallen citadel where the insatiable devil created evil. In sweat and filth, the faces of fugitives, trains race across the endless steppe, tunnels, stages, soot, smoke, and the tightness of the freight car. Only one aspiration, to vanish, to flee. The war is lost. Moaning, tears. We've crossed the border. A sigh of relief. Tired, they wipe the sweat from their faces, sitting on the ground, night in Busan, in anxious conversations. And there it is already visible, the homeland, Senzaki Bay, green coast. In the cemetery Tama, the silent, the nameless, a granite monument stands mysteriously.